Welcome to a very special episode of the Friendmuecast featuring a talented and up-and-coming YouTube creator that makes fantastic videos about shoot-'em-ups, arcade games, and Sega nostalgia. The wonderful Wiggles of Wiggles Arcade. And it's very much a pleasure to have you on the show today, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I really enjoy your work, and I'm so glad that I stumbled onto your channel. Lately, I've been playing a lot of my Sega Saturn collection, and I've been really enjoying this little gem called Darius Gaiden, which, for those of you who may not know, it's a shoot 'em up, and I started wondering what the best shmups for the Saturn are, and that led me straight to you, Wiggles, through your video top 10 shoot 'em ups on the Sega Saturn, which was a great video. And I gradually came to realize what a huge Shenmue fan you are, because you would mention it off and on during your shoot 'em up videos, which I thought was an interesting combination. And I really couldn't wait to sit down and have an episode with you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean that's definitely one of those videos that I was like when I first started my YouTube channel, I was like, okay, I have to make like a list of like best Saturn shmups. Like I've been a huge shmup fan for years now, and so that's like the pinnacle of shmups for me is like the Saturn shmup library. I mean, they're obviously like a lot. There's better shmups on other platforms and whatnot, but overall, I feel like the Saturn is like the best in terms of like what's represented on there. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was a video that I really enjoyed making, and I spent way too much time playing, all kinds of shooters on the console, but
Oh,
no,
right.
it was totally worth in the end. It seems like a lot of people responded really positively to it, and a lot of people seem to think it's fairly informative as far as a guide for, if you were just going to play 10, which ones would you pick? So
Oh
yeah.
man, yeah, it was extremely informative for me, and it made me feel even more proud if I didn't think that was possible to be a Saturn owner. So I'm very grateful for that video. And it's interesting because I never really used to like shmups as a kid. I played Gradius on the NES, uh, and I enjoyed it, but it was so hard and so punishing at the time that I just decided, you know what, shoot 'em ups are way too hard. I'm just gonna stay away, swear those off. And it wasn't until believe it or not, when I got an Xbox One and Cuphead came out, I really got into Cuphead. And the more I played it, the more I realized, hey, like this is a lot like a shmup. And then also there are some levels in Cuphead that are like shoot 'em up homages. And so that kind of got me back into that. So um, what I guess what led you to become a shmup junkie?
Yeah. So going way back here, in the mid '90s or so, I was like elementary school aged, and my local rec center of all places actually had a couple of arcade cabinets. They had a Neo Geo MVS two slot, and they also had another arcade cabinet they would like alternate out occasionally. And so, like mid '90s, like '95, '96, maybe '97, they had a write-in cabinet, and I just so happened to be with like one of my really good childhood friends at the time, and we didn't know what Raiden was. We just saw it there in the rec center. We were just kind of watching like the demo reel play, since no one was on it, and we're just seeing like flashy like purple and green bullets flying everywhere and stuff exploding, and being like 9, 10-year-old boys, we were like, oh my god, this looks amazing, let's try this out. So like we both had some quarters on us, and we played probably 10 times. We probably completely sucked and only played for like 10 minutes because we couldn't like last any longer than that. But no, we like that game, like we talked about that game for like a month after that. We were like, oh my god, we should like go back and play Raiden sometime, that game's amazing, it's like the best game ever. And like that's kind of where it all began. It was when I was like in elementary school, and then probably not until like I'd say I was probably like in my late teens that I really discover sort of like the breadth of what's in that genre. I mean, before that, I was like, yeah, I know what R-Type is, Gradius, pretty much like all your sort of like really famous like shmup franchises. But it wasn't until like I was in my late teens, early 20s that I was like, wow, there's a lot of like other shooters out there for all these other consoles and in the arcade that I was completely oblivious to. So
Right. You know what?
then that
Actually, it might have been R-Type and not Gradius that I played on the NES. I don't remember if they're both on there or not, but yeah, I'm amazed that you weren't. I would have been intimidated by seeing millions of like purple bullets and exploding and flying everywhere. I would have been like, that looks too hard. But you weren't even scared of that. It drew you in, right?
Yeah, and it was mostly just the action part of it. I guess neither of us were really thinking about the difficulty. We were just like, just completely overstimulated by what we were seeing on the screen and just thinking like, God, we need to try this out. This looks amazing, and it's kind of like, kids doing stupid stuff that they shouldn't just because it looks fun, like, lighting stuff on fire, or like, sneaking in and grabbing some fireworks and lighting them off in your garage or something like that. I mean, that was pretty much us with that writing cabinet. We were just like, yeah, let's try this out. This looks awesome. And so
So that's
we
that's what started you on the path to dedicating yourself to a very difficult and extremely expensive genre of video games.
yes, that was my gateway drug into shmuppdom. So yeah, absolutely.
Taking a hit on the shmup pipe.
Exactly. Still doing it daily, almost daily, cutting back a
Right.
little bit.
Well, I was playing Darius Gaiden, as I mentioned before, on the Saturn, and I started looking up because I got frustrated. I was like, why do I suck so bad at this? Like, I could beat Cuphead, which Cuphead's not that difficult of a game, even though it has a reputation for being that. I think that just shows how coddled people who play modern video games are. They've made them much easier than they used to be back in the day.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
that's very true.
But I thought, man, I'm pretty awesome because I just got this achievement that only 0.001% of people get, which I got an A rank on the Devil in Cuphead. I must be pretty awesome. I put in Darius Gaiden and just get wrecked. And I'm thinking, why do I suck so bad at shmups? And I started looking up videos about Darius Gaiden. I think there's one guy called Boffner and some other guy, I forget his name, but they made these really informative videos. And that game actually showed me that I had been playing shmups totally wrong. Like it's like you think like, okay, there's nothing to know. You just get in there, you shoot stuff, you try not to get hit. But like there's so much depth and strategy to these shoot 'em ups that you don't realize. And they have so much more to offer than what you just see on the surface. Like, for example, in Darius Gaiden, you don't have to blow up every single mini boss. You can capture them and then they help you. And
Right. Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, they're not all created equal. I mean, there are some that are pretty shallow, but yeah, I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about it. I mean, just the art of staying alive in those games is like, 2/3 of the battle there, and you have to figure out all kinds of stuff to be able to do that. And
mm,
as you said in Gradius, I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do in that, and that's Gradius is definitely a series that I've played quite a bit, but it's one that I need to play more of. Just because it's been like I was when I got really into shooters, I sort of gravitated towards some of the more like flashy, more well-renowned ones out there, as far as like what's on the Saturn and some of the
yeah,
sixth gen stuff and all that. But no, Gradius is a very, very challenging franchise. Absolutely,
right.
definitely kicks my butt still to this day.
Yeah. And I say that I swore off shoot 'em ups because of the difficulty of them, but if you think about it, Yu Suzuki's Space Harrier, which makes a cameo appearance in Shenmue, in Shenmue 1 and 2, I should say, that's basically a super scalar shoot 'em up, and I actually really love that game, even though I always get destroyed in that one as well. But um,
No, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's the one that I always play. Like when I go into the U arcade, I'm like, okay, where's Space Harrier? I need to, pop some yen into that and play that. But I mean, all the games that are represented in the arcades and stuff, and the first two games are, incredible. I mean, it's pretty much like a celebration of everything that Yu Suzuki created during the 1980s, for arcades that obviously just transcends Sega. And it's just like, yeah, those were some of the best games in 80s arcades, period. Namco, Midway, any other company out there, like that's like where it was at right there. Sega was on top of its game. So yeah, that's one of my personal favorite things about Shenmue. I definitely love that about that. It definitely represents the arcades and whatnot.
yeah, I definitely have a lot of Shenmue related questions for you later on, but I just wanted to point out that you just seem to have such an intense nostalgia for Sega and for arcade games that really resonates with me. And I was wondering if you could share some of your story of your childhood gaming and how that journey brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first time I ever played a Genesis, my cousins actually had one, and I was about 4 years old, and that would have been let's see here, 1991. What we used to do is my parents would take me over there for like, barbecues during the summer and like holidays like Thanksgiving and 4th of July. And pretty much it was like walk through the door, hey Aunt Tammy, hey Aunt Tammy, hey Uncle Mark. And then after that it was like straight down to their basement to play their Genesis. And like most, kids around that time period that played the Genesis, they had Sonic the Hedgehog, and I literally would just play Sonic the Hedgehog for like 5, 6, 7 hours straight while I was over there. Like my
Yep.
parents would be upstairs like chatting and drinking and stuff, and I'd be downstairs just like, playing the hell out of Sonic. And I mean they had other games too, like Hard Driving, which I try and repress the memories of playing that game, but we have to embrace all parts of our past. So yeah, I mean I played a lot of Hard Driving despite how terrible that game is. Later on, they had games like Mutant League Hockey and oh god, what else did they have over there? They got Sonic 2 at one point, which I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. But anyhow, so like my parents caught
Perfect little
on.
brother game.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I was like, hey, like I really want a Genesis, and so
Did you
um,
not have a Nintendo or like an NES or a Super Nintendo at the time?
no, I didn't. I did not have an NES. I didn't own an NES until well after the NES was discontinued and everything. I did eventually get an SNES, but I'll get to that in a minute. Like
Sure.
it's kind of funny what ended up happening with that. But yeah, anyhow, like on my 5th birthday, my dad went out for like a couple of hours, and it's like it's my birthday, so even at 5 years old, I was like, okay, he's up to something. He's about to like go get me something. So I was like, I really wanted to go with him, and obviously he couldn't allow me to go with him because he was getting my presents, and so I was pretty upset about that. But he came back like a couple hours later, has this like massive bag with him, and I wish I could remember like what the name of the store was on the bag and all that, but I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyhow, like he comes through the door with this huge bag, wouldn't even let him go upstairs to wrap it. I'm like, okay, like open this up. I want to see what you got me. And so like it was a Sega Genesis. It was the Sonic the Hedgehog pack-in version, and he also got me Flintstones, which is a super underrated game. It's made by Taito, just like Dinosaur Peak, and was like a Dino's Rescue or something like that on the NES. But yeah, he got me Flintstones, Home Alone, and Batman Returns, and that was like one of the coolest birthdays I've ever had. I mean, it was so long ago, but I still remember it pretty vividly. And that was like my go-to console throughout the early 90s. And then my aunt actually, this is the Super Nintendo part, she actually got me an SNES in probably like 1995 or so. And aside from like the first two Donkey Kong country games, like I barely played it. I mean, I was really happy to have it, and I did rent games for it. But I mean, I still gamed on my Genesis like 9 times out of 10. So yeah, I mean that was kind of like how it all started, and then
Did you feel
uh,
some brand loyalty? Like were you like, yeah, I have a Super Nintendo, but like I can't cheat on my Genesis kind of a thing?
I think honestly it was just my preference in a lot of the games on there. Like one thing that really didn't help with me to sort of like more or less shunning my Super Nintendo was Sonic 3.
Hmm.
I still love that game like probably a little bit too much. Like I yeah, that game was just like mind blowing when it came out, and as I said, it's still really fun to play. But that kind of like overlapped into me getting a Super Nintendo, and so it was like, oh yeah, like I got Donkey Kong Country, but I want to play Sonic 3 some more. And but yeah, I mean, I still, as I said, I still love the first two Donkey Kong Country games, and I
Yeah.
played those a lot. But yeah, I just always gravitated kind of towards Sega's library of games, and like Vector Man and stuff came out kind of in the later end of the Genesis's life, and played those. And yeah, I don't know, I've just always kind of been more of an action game person. Didn't really play any of the RPGs or anything like that on the Super Nintendo back when it was still the Nintendo console and all that. But yeah, I just big Sega fan. I did get an N64 instead of a Saturn for the next generation, but
Oh,
got
you didn't get the Saturn? So this is so funny. Your story is like such an inversion of my own because you were like the friend that I had who had a Genesis and I had the Super Nintendo and I was like, No, Nintendo, not Sega. I was originally a Nintendo fanboy, and I kept repressing these feelings of like, I really want to play the Genesis. And I'd be like, no, I don't. No, I like Nintendo. Nintendo's better, right? Isn't it better? And then one day I went to Walmart and Sonic the Hedgehog was at a kiosk, and I was like, oh, and I started playing it, and I was like, oh, this is so great. Oh, forgive me, Nintendo. And I started playing it. And so ever since then, I was like, I wanted to be a Sega kid, but we could only have one system, and I had my Super Nintendo, so I couldn't cross the threshold to the other side. But then I asked my dad for a PlayStation, and he gave me a Saturn, and so then I didn't have a Genesis, but I had a Saturn. So
That's awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I was I don't know why. I mean, I think honestly it was probably Super Mario 64 because like when that game was sort of revealed and all that, I mean there was literally nothing like it. I mean, it just like and on top of that, I think I was kind of caught up in like, well, the Saturn and PlayStation only have 32 bits and the Nintendo 64 is 64 bits, so it's like twice as good, right?
Yep, Bit
Like
Wars.
eight yeah, exactly. Like 8-year-old logic there too. So I think that was part of it. But yeah, no, I was really happy to have my N64. But like two of my friends growing up, they actually had Saturns. And so
Whoa.
like every time I went over there, I would just like both their houses. It was just like Virtua Fighter, Virtua Cop, Die Hard Arcade. And then eventually when Knights came out, I remember that was like I mean I loved like Virtua Fighter and all that. We played those games for like hours, but like when one of my friends got Knights, like I was like, okay, I think I made a mistake. I think I should have asked for a Saturn. Like that game just it's like to me it transcends just being like a really good game. Like it's like I don't say this about too many games, but it's like a genuinely special game. Like it's really hard to put my finger on it and sort of like objectify what that specialness is, but it just has this like feel to it that's like it's like being wrapped in like a warm blanket. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's such a wholesome and encouraging game. I definitely agree. I didn't get to play it till I was a grown man. I always wanted to play it as a kid, but I was like the only kid I knew in. I grew up in Wyoming, so nobody had a Sega Saturn except for me. Nobody even heard of it, and
Hmm.
there were no stores that had it because there was no mall. You're lucky to have a Walmart in the little tiny towns I lived in. So it was just me and my brothers playing that Saturn and going like, man, this Virtua Fighter is great. Street Fighter Alpha 2 is great. And then one day my Saturn just stopped working. And I couldn't ever figure
Oh.
out why, so we threw it away. And then years and years later, my little brother told me, yeah, I don't know why, I just poured some soda in it just to see what would happen. And I
Oh,
didn't tell you.
oh.
And I was like, it's good that you didn't tell me because that could have been bad for our relationship, bro. But, you know, after that, we got an N64 and played Mario 64, and that was quite the revelation as well. So that's pretty interesting. Did you end up getting a Dreamcast then down the line?
I did. Like, so between probably like 1996 and 99 when the Dreamcast came out, like I was mostly all about the N64. That's what I owned and primarily gamed on. Didn't have a PlayStation during that time, and as I said, my two friends had the Saturns. But no, like when the Dreamcast was sort of like ramping up and all the promotion stuff was coming out for it like that summer before it eventually came out in the fall. I was all aboard the Sega hype train at that point. I'm like, I need to get a Dreamcast. And unfortunately, being, in my early adolescence, I didn't really have access to a substantial income, and my birthday wasn't anytime soon. So I was like, okay, all right, what am I going to do? So I kind of talked to my little brother. I mean, my little brother's really into video games too, but I certainly wanted a Dreamcast more than he did. But I was somehow able to convince him to ask for a Dreamcast for his birthday, and his birthday's just like a couple months after like the Dreamcast came out in North America, and so he ended up getting one. And I mean, he played it quite a bit, but I played it easily 5, 6 times more than he did. I mean, I was just constantly on that thing. And I mean, I still played some of those late release N64 games like Perfect Dark and stuff, and I got really into those. But I mean, from like 1999 on until pretty much later, it was just like I was all about like Sonic Adventure and like all those like arcade perfect ports that the Dreamcast got. That to me, that was a dream come true because like I mean, obviously, I have a YouTube channel about arcade games. Like arcades should probably be like somewhat, special to me and something that I really enjoy. And I mean, just like having those arcade ports in my home, like where I could just play them like from the comfort of my living room was like the coolest thing ever. I mean, before that, it had been more or less like compromised on a lot of different consoles, but I feel like the Dreamcast was like the first sort of like platform, like home platform, other than like the Neo Geo AES, which my parents weren't CEOs or like dentists or anything like that. So I never had an AES. But like for me, the Dreamcast was like that first console that made me feel like I had an arcade in my home, which like I loved about it, among other things. But yeah.
Oh man, do you remember when? Because I mean, I got a Dreamcast when there was about a year left in its lifespan, and every time I picked up a video game magazine, it was always like, "Man, the Dreamcast rocks! Man, it's tearing it up! Oh, look at all these great games you got to buy! Look at this! Look at that! Look at this!" And I was playing the games and going, "Yeah, this thing is the future. This is the best. I love this thing." PlayStation 2, what now? Who cares about that? I love this Dreamcast, right? And then they were like, "Yeah, oh, nobody really expected this, but it's over. Sorry." And it was just done. Like, did that affect you very deeply at the time, or were you aware of it when they pulled the plug?
So at the time, no, because if I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, but it got discontinued. Was it in March of 2001? Is that right?
Uh, I don't even remember. I just remember being horribly scarred and depressed that whole day when I got the news.
I think it was March of. I know it was like that, spring of like 2001 that it ended up like officially getting discontinued. And at the time, I mean, I subscribed to GamePro at the time, at least. I think also Nintendo Power, but obviously Nintendo's not going to give two shits about the Dreamcast or anything like that. So,
Right.
but yeah, no, I in GamePro they were talking about. For some reason, I must have glanced over it because I didn't really find out about it until probably that summer of 2001. And yeah, I mean, it did bum me out. I have a bit of a confession to make. I had a PS2 at the time too, because my little brother got the Dreamcast, right? So it's like, hey, I have
Yeah.
to get my own console too. And so my aunt, who she doesn't have any kids or anything like that, so she kind of like spoiled my siblings and my cousins and stuff like that. And so she ended up getting a PS2 at the time.
That's
So
okay. Hey,
I
I have a PS2 as well now. It's all water. It's water under the bridge. I
right.
mean, we can forgive Sony. They helped us get Shenmue 3, so they made up for it.
Right, exactly. But yeah, no, I had the PS2, so I mean, I was really happy to have that, and I guess that acted as somewhat of a buffer against the bad news. But yeah, I mean, I honestly had no idea until months after, just because I mean, I'd walk into Target or Walmart or whatever, or there was a Software Etc., which was eventually swallowed up by GameStop in the early 2000s, but they still sold brand new Dreamcast games, and I'd go in there like a month later after I'd been in there previously, and it's like, oh hey, look, those are like there's like 3 or 4 new games that just came out for it. That's awesome. And I mean, it was stuff like Crazy Taxi 2, I believe, came out after the Dreamcast was officially discontinued, and probably the most famous example of it was Sonic Adventure 2 that came out I think in the summer of 2001. So it was getting
Yeah.
all these games, and I'm like, yeah, like if they're still making it, like it's still being supported. And unfortunately, that was not the reality. I mean, they had discontinued it, and
Right.
so yeah, that did suck, knowing that they're, that like this is the end, this is all we're gonna get, and enjoy it while it lasts, because Sega's done, at least with making consoles.
Right. And I mean, it was nice to get the ports to the GameCube and the original Xbox on the PS2, but then after that generation, yeah, we really entered into kind of a dark age with Sega where it really wasn't the same. That was kind of they went out on a high note with the Dreamcast and with those ports to that generation of consoles, but then it got pretty grim for a while. So,
Absolutely, yeah. No, that definitely sucked. And I mean, there've been some excellent Sega releases that they release on non-Sega hardware as a third party. But yeah, I mean, it's that sort of like, I guess, magic. And it sounds really corny, but like that whole like magic of just it being like, okay, it's a new Sega game on a Sega console. I mean, that's unless you were like alive during when Sega was actually making consoles, it's something that you just can't really know what it felt like. I mean, it was pretty awesome. So yeah, and
yeah.
and obviously what that's like. But I mean, someone who was born in like the late 90s, early 2000s, they might have no idea. So
Right, exactly right. Well, I mentioned earlier that you would kind of bring up in your shoot 'em up videos and in your fighting game videos and things like that, that you were a big fan of Shenmue, and I recently found out that Shenmue 1 and 2 are tied as your favorite game of all time. Is that right?
correct. Yes,
Wow.
yes.
See, and I was very taken aback to hear that. I kind of want to know how did Shenmue factor into your Dreamcast experience there? How exactly did that come to be?
Yeah, so I mean, as I said earlier, I subscribed to several video game magazines, and kind of like shortly after the Dreamcast came out, that was sort of a title that everyone knew was in development, and it was this like almost like a life simulator, which at the time there was nothing else like that. I mean, there was like MMOs like EverQuest and stuff like that, but that was all like Lord of the Rings, high fantasy, that sort of thing. This was like grounded in like a real world setting, and so that just like sounded super cool to me. But one thing that was a major catalyst for me personally was getting into anime a lot, like in the late '90s, thanks to like Toonami and stuff like that on Cartoon Network. I mean, that's kind of when anime. I mean, anime had been in North America prior to that, but it was so like, I mean, it's fairly niche. Well, it's no, I would say it's mainstream now, but like back then, it was like super niche. Like there was barely anything coming out. I mean, you'd go to like Blockbuster and they'd have like 10 different anime movies or DVDs, and that's pretty much all you got until Toonami came along.
Yep.
And so that really like it really sort of
Well,
started
there
up
was
this.
Samurai Pizza Cats on at 6 in the morning on like some, I don't know, ABC.
Right, exactly.
It
No,
was,
yeah, there was stuff like that. I remember like waking up in the morning before school and like Sailor Moon and
yeah.
Pokemon was on like this before
Yeah,
like Pokemon
Pokemon.
got like really big.
Yes.
It was on at like 6:30 in the morning, and I mean at least with Pokemon, it became sort of like this motivation for me to like get up and watch that and everything because at the time that's the only way you could have watched it. This was before it got on like Kids WB and stuff, and I think it was on like Fox or something like that, like really early in the morning.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
yeah,
yeah,
Dragon Ball Z, Gundam Wing, Yu Yu Hakusho, was it Tenchi in Tokyo or whatever it's called, Tenchi Muyo, all
yep,
those.
yep.
Um,
But yeah, like I mean, Toonami got me like really into anime, which sort of then got me really into like Japanese culture and music and all kinds of other stuff. And I kind of became sort of a Japanophile, so to
yeah.
speak, like in the late '90s, and I just
Or
couldn't get enough. So
as the
it's
kids
like
say these days, a weeb, right?
exactly. I was gonna say we, but I'm like, okay, what can I call this? Because it sort of like transcended anime, and it just went into like, I mean, I was just like I would have like given up my like the entire contents of my bedroom pretty much if I was able to go to Japan, which
Hmm.
unfortunately I still have never been able to do. I've never been there, but no, like it just got me really into Japan and everything like that. And so here we have this game that's coming out that literally it's a life simulator where you play like a Japanese teenager living in 80s Dobuita, and I was like, I need to get this game. Like I really need to get this game. So Shenmue comes out and I think it's 2000, and I pretty much have just I saved up my allowance and whatnot, and I went out and bought it, and it did not disappoint one bit. I mean, it just was like it was incredible, and completely fell
So
in
you
love with
took
it.
to it immediately.
I was like, I was so hyped for it going into it that when I finally got it, I mean, it was some of it was not what I expected. I mean, it's a very slow paced type of game because I mean, you're going around asking questions and investigating your father's murder and whatnot, and it's definitely unlike anything that was around at the time, and even still to this day, in that regard. But I don't know, it was so. It still is, but back then it was like the immersion was just unmatched. It was like unlike anything I'd ever played. And so I was just instantly drawn in. It's like I would investigate my father's murder until like noon or one, and then it's like, okay, time to buy a bunch of capsule toys and play arcade games, and walk the streets and go to like a soba noodle stand or something like that, or go, to like one of the host clubs or something like that. I mean, it was incredible, and I was kind of like, love at first sight, more or less. So yeah, it was just an amazing experience.
Definitely, I can totally relate to that. And I mean, one of the things that struck me initially were just how technically impressive and beautiful the graphics were. I was used to popping in a video game, the opening cutscene happens, okay, yeah, but what does the real game look like? And then with Shenmue, after the opening cutscene was over, which was a really cool, awesome cutscene showing Lan Di kill your father with awesome Virtua Fighter martial arts moves and choreography, then the
Hmm.
game starts and it looks just like the cutscene. And I
Yep.
was like, are you serious?
Yep.
Wait, the Dreamcast can look this good? Like, what? And I mean, just that one game puts it. I don't know many PS2 games that even looked as good as Shenmue did. Like it really showed how many like the chops of that system.
Yeah, it absolutely. And I mean, I don't know which system is technically more powerful. I want to say the PS2 is, but the PS2's graphics, I mean, especially through like a composite video, which is how most of us were playing those games back then, is definitely a lot more muddy looking on the PS2. And then like with the Dreamcast, I mean, like its games just have this like sharpness to them, where like the colors pop and
Right.
the polygons look excellent and everything like that. And I don't think there was a game maybe during like the Dreamcast entire lifespan that looked as incredible, at least in terms of 3D polygons in Shenmue. I mean, I think it's literally like the graphics pinnacle of that console. And I mean, you're right. I mean, it just looked absolutely astounding. I mean, the cutscenes were the same as the gameplay scenes, and it was really really amazing and very impressive.
Definitely. So I can understand where you're coming from with your interest in Japanese culture, with how it's arguably the best Dreamcast game for the system in terms of technical specifications, in terms of visuals, and arguably in terms of scope and influence. But why are the Shenmue games your favorite games of all time? What makes them better to you than, even shoot 'em ups and Mario 64 and other giants like those?
Definitely. So back when it came out, I mean, it just like it just blew my socks off. Like that game was just it was it was just really unlike anything I'd ever played it. And I think a big part of that was the immersion. I mean, like as I said, you're investigating your father's murder, which is a pretty unusual situation. I mean, there's not very many people out there, fortunately, that have to do that in real life. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, you're literally interacting with NPCs that are not copied and pasted. They're all like living, breathing people, and
And
they
they're all voice acted. That blew my mind.
exactly. And it's like the weather changes every day. One day it's raining, the next day it's sunny, the next day it's snowing. Um,
Shadows, like you have a shadow. Like it looks kind of like a crude shadow now, but at the time it was like, hey, look, my shadow moves with me. Wow, this
no,
looks way better
exactly.
than Driver Two's shadow on the PS1.
No, exactly. And I mean, it was just like little tiny like details like that just really added to like the overall feel of immersion in that game. And it's like, I mean, you have to get a job in that game. Like you're a forklift driver. I mean, there's certainly way more glamorous jobs out there, but I mean, no less, you have to get a job in order to, find out more information about your dad's killer and all that, and also just just to get by day to day and all that and earn money so you can live and everything. And I loved that about it. And it was just like, and it was the immersion in combination with just like the story and the characters. And it's like, it really, really puts you in the shoes of Ryo Hazuki. Like, you become like, you feel like you're as invested as him in finding Londi so you can get your revenge. And I mean, when that game ended, you beat Chi and knock him into the harbor and all that. Like, spoiler alert, sorry about that. But
Mhm.
at the
It's not spoilers in this community, don't worry.
okay, okay. It's like someone like hasn't played it yet, like, oh, you son of a bitch, or something. But no, like, like after that, you just kind of like just take a deep breath and just like lean back, and you're like, oh my god, that was incredible. Like it just leaves you with this feeling of just like pure satisfaction, and like you just never wanted it to end, and it
Yeah.
unfortunately did. But you don't feel remorse, more or less. You just feel like that was an incredible experience, and I still have that experience to this day. And it's probably even more enhanced because it's been over 20 years since that game came out when I originally played it. And so I have just this like just ridiculous nostalgia, and just I'm just super sentimental about that whole entire franchise, especially that first game. But the second game too. Like, I mean, I played it on the like most people in North America. I played it on the original Xbox originally. My little brother had one, and
Yeah.
I mean, same feeling. Like I was just like, oh my god. And in some ways, like the like Shenmue 2, I liked that more than the first one, but I feel like there's certain strengths to both that kind of like outweigh the other one, to where it's like I can't say like, oh, Shenmue 2 is better than Shenmue 1 or vice versa. Like I I can't choose. Like they're like
Yeah, it
it's
is
kind of like thinking
difficult because
which one of your kids like you love more. Like I can't like
right. No, that is
uh
definitely really hard. I would
yeah.
definitely say I've said this before, but I do feel that Shenmue 2's highs are higher than Shenmue 1's, but also its lows are lower. Like I think that driving a forklift is way better than hauling crates with dual in. I th but I do think that Kowloon City is so spectacular looking. I mean, what a set piece.
Hmm.
But then at the same time, while you're in Kowloon, you have to do the ghost hall building and walk on planks.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's not that cool. And like it just goes back and forth. Like Shenmue 1 had the 70-man battle, which is really cool. Um, yeah, it's hard to choose one because they're both so amazing at what they do. Um, I think what I'm hearing you say though is that what makes these two games your favorite video game of all time is that they were able to immerse you and make you feel connected to that world in a way that no other video game had ever done to that point.
Correct. Yeah, that's 100% accurate for sure.
They're very intentionally and carefully crafted to do that. I mean, when you dissect the games, you just see all these things like you go in. I just remember playing um, Shenmue for the first time and seeing Ryo's father teach him how to do the elbow assault, and I thought, man, that's familiar. Why is that so familiar? Wait, that's Akira's move. And then I go into Fukusan's room and I'm like, why is there a Virtua Fighter poster in here?
Yep.
Wait a minute. There's something to this. What is he telling me? What is this? Yeah, it wasn't until years later that I found out it was supposed to be a Virtua Fighter RPG, but you go to the U arcade and you're playing Space Harrier and you're a guy in a brown leather jacket and you're shooting at a green dragon and then you're like, hey, this reminds me of the fact that I'm a guy in a brown leather jacket and a guy in a dragon suit killed my dad. Maybe I should get back to looking, looking for him.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
or hey, I'm going to play Hang On. And then, hey, it turns out Hang On was secretly training for me to get on the motorcycle and go save Nozomi at midnight, and it's so unexpected the way it throws things at you. And yeah, I just think that's cool. I mean, full disclosure, Shenmue is not my favorite game of all time. My favorite game of all time would be The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. But I will say that the two games that influenced me most as a person, like sometimes you read a book and you think, I'm a different person now that I've read this book, or
Mhm.
now that I've seen this film, or now that I've looked at this piece of art. Only two video games made me feel like I had changed as a person, that I had transformed through the experience of playing and beating those games. And one was Ocarina of Time, but the other was Shenmue.
Hmm. Yep. And it's funny you say that. Ocarina of Time is actually my third favorite game of all time. So we're on the
Nice.
same wavelength here. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was number two up until a few years ago, and then I played Breath of the Wild, and I just like I sort of agonized over it. I'm like, okay, which one do I like more? And I feel like I was a little bit more immersed and invested in Breath of the Wild. But no, I mean Ocarina is I've probably played Ocarina of Time more than I've played either Shenmue game, which is kind of funny considering I like Shenmue more. But no,
I played
I love
Shenmue more than I
Ocarina.
played Ocarina of Time, so there you go.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We're supposed to be talking about Shenmue, but I will say about Breath of the Wild. I loved that game. I think it was genius. Um, the thing is, Ocarina of Time's ending with that boss fight and the
Oh my god.
castle, the castle collapsing, and Ganondorf morphing into like the Minotaur and defeating him, and being, going back to the past, and just the way it ended was so satisfying. And I feel like Breath of the Wild was like, hey, I'm a giant wild boar that shoots laser beams, and also I will never hit you with these laser beams. Like I wish it would have been like a Shadow of the Colossus type final battle. I feel like they spent all this time working on like how to climb in the game. You should have been able to scale that giant pig and like kill him, um, Shadow of the Colossus style. I think that's what I was hoping for, and it didn't give me that, so I felt disappointed. So uh, but everything else about Breath of the Wild, I would definitely agree that it's like the best Zelda game ever made. Um, you know, other than me feeling slightly underwhelmed at the ending, but
Yeah,
definitely.
the bosses of that game were definitely one of the low points of it, and definitely one of the aspects that hands down Ocarina of Time is better. Like every boss in Ocarina is just super memorable. Like Volvagia and like the Phantom Ganon and the Forest Temple and stuff like that. Like all those stick out. But I try and think back what like the flying, I forgot what his name is, but like the flying divine beast, like what that version of Ganon looked like versus the one that was in one of the other divine beasts. Like I couldn't really tell you, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, that definitely was one of
there was like a
the
lightning
low
or a
points of
thunder
it.
blight Ganon or something. That boss was really cool.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, which boss did you like better than Chai or Donyu?
Oh man. I'm gonna go with Chai. I'm definitely gonna
Yeah,
go with Chai. Yeah, Don Yu. I remember being really really frustrated with that battle. I don't know. I really liked fighting Chai. It just felt more like Virtua Fighter-ish, but with Don Yu, it was just like I don't know, he'd just like grab you and stuff. And you'd be like, what the hell? Like, and it got super, super frustrating. I mean, I still enjoyed it overall, but I remember
yeah,
especially the first time I played it, I was just like, I had tried, oh God, probably 20 times at that point. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna beat this guy, I'm gonna beat this guy. And I eventually did, but I was probably like, two more tries from like needing a new Xbox controller. I was just I was not having it, for at the time. But another one I struggled with was shortly before that. I forgot what his name is, but he's that martial artist that's like in the basement of the ghost building, I think it is, and he has like the face paint and all that, and he's in that like
oh
traditional like Chinese like martial arts outfit. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah, I think Baihu is his name.
That sounds right. Yeah, yeah, I can remember his name, but yeah, I
Yeah,
that battle was hard as hell, but like I enjoyed that, 3, 4 times more than I did the Don Yu battle on the roof. Like I just, yeah.
right. He uses the same fighting style as Lan Di does, which is Ko and Ken, which is Lao Chan from Virtua Fighter's fighting style. So it makes
Nice.
sense why he'd be so difficult to fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely struggled with it, but I was just like, hell yeah, this is like, playing Virtua Fighter 2, so I was just having a blast doing it back when I mean still when I replay it, but back then I was just like, this is so cool, but yeah.
Right. And isn't it so cool how if you have different moves, it'll give you like a different cutscene and like a different QTE to finish off Baihu. Like if you have the machine gun fist, it'll do that instead of just I forget what the other one is. Or just I don't know. I really love the way Shenmue did QTEs. I had never seen a game like I'd never played Dragon's Lair, so a QTE was a totally new concept to me. But
Hmm.
I still feel like Shenmue 1 and 2, they did QTEs so right. Like um, just it would take these cinematic experiences and make them interactable. Um, and like I don't know, there's a scene in Shenmue 1 where you're in a warehouse and you're like beating up like a whole bunch of different harbor thugs.
Hmm.
And based on how many hits you take and when you take them, Ryo does different. He'll do like a different flourish to defeat the final boss, or not the final boss, but the guy in the purple t-shirt.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
or like when you're in Wanzai and you're walking down this alley and people are like chucking watermelons and stuff at you, and like every time you go through that, you can get a slightly different experience from the QTEs, and I just feel like that's so genius that, or I feel like the best QTE segment of all is the very beginning of Shenmue 2, where you're chasing after the kid who steals your backpack, and you can fail at finding him so many times, and you can like find him like, oh yeah, I used this guy's money to buy a popsicle, haha, and he's like buying ice cream for other kids, and then Rio's like, hey, get back here, and you chase after him,
Right.
and then you you fight uh Ren's fellow gang members, and like you can keep losing to them and refinding them in other places like over and over again at the beginning. Like I mean, it's just like the possibilities and the layers. It just makes you think like, what kind of a crazy flow chart did they make to set that up?
It's unreal. It's unreal, and it just goes back to that level of detail where it's just like, I mean, I don't even know how many times I've gone back and replayed both games, but like I feel like every time I do, I always like experience and find something new, and that's like just one of those things that's like, I mean, you can't say that about a lot of games now or, that are 20, 25 years old where you can literally go back and replay them the fifth, sixth, seventh time and be like, oh my God, I never noticed that before. Hey, I didn't know that was over there. And I mean, it's sometimes it's like fairly mundane stuff, but I mean, it just really, really drives home just how, just like they were trying to think of everything when they made that game. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, for 2000, 2001, they kind of succeeded. I mean, given sort of the limitations of what you were able to do with a video game back then. I mean, it's even a level of detail that you really don't even see in a lot of, brand new AAA games that have come out of the last, 2-3 years. So it is absolutely worth, noting and admiring and everything like that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I mean, on top of all of that, I was also very surprised to hear you say that Shenmue 3 is in your top 10 favorite games of all time. It's a top 10 game for you. Um, and, that game has become such a polarizing and controversial game on social media that, I mean, it's just very refreshing to hear from an old school Shenmue fan that views Shenmue 3 so positively. And I was just kind of wondering what makes Shenmue 3 a top 10 game for you?
So, so first of all, I mean, I really really like that game, and you are right, it is in my top 10. I don't like it as much as the first two games, but as
Yeah,
far as the
nor
game,
do I, and that's understandable, but
yeah, yeah. But as far as the game itself, it just it was about as like perfect of a Shenmue sequel, of a sequel to Shenmue 2, as you could have possibly gotten in 2019.
it was
They
incredibly faithful to the spirit of the first two games.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And that's what I loved about it so much. I mean, it didn't look like GTA 5, and that's not what I wanted, and I don't think that's what at least I would assume that a lot of people who like back the Kickstarter and stuff, that's not what they wanted either. They wanted something that obviously looked more modern. I mean, a lot of us would have just taken, Dreamcast graphics and stuff like that and been happy with the new Shenmue game, but obviously, they had to build it on like a newer platform and all that to appease, more modern gaming sentiments and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, as far as the gameplay and what they had you doing and how you had to, get little jobs and all that to survive and to pay for like certain key items and all that. I mean, I like that was exactly in the same spirit and exactly like it how it was in the previous two games. And it has the martial arts and all that, which admittedly weren't as good as they were in the first two games, but I still
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. Like I had a blast with it, and I was just like, they did it. Like this, they made like the Shenmue game I've wanted for almost 20 years now. Like they made it. And I was very pleased with it. I mean, I had a few minor gripes with it, but I mean, overall, I was more than happy with it. So yeah, I mean, when you went on YouTube or somewhere else and it was like, oh my god, like worst game ever, biggest disappointment ever, and then there was the whole like Steam fiasco where they kind of went back on that and they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be an Epic Games exclusive. People lost their minds even more, and it was just like it kind of just
Yeah.
became this trend for several weeks. I feel like where it was like the big thing for like big YouTube channels to just to like you know completely like just trash the game. And I mean that's kind of what the popular opinion was at the time, which um to me was very very unfair. I feel like it was exactly what it needed to be, and I think a lot of people were like, oh no, it needs to be more like GTA 5. It needs to be, more like a modern open world game. And it's like it wouldn't be Shenmue if it was like that. So I don't know
Right.
why you people are upset. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Why do you top 10 is really high praise. What about specifically about Shenmue 3 makes it so good in your eyes?
As I was saying, just how faithful it is to the first two in terms of just gameplay and just that overall feel, like how, you'd wake up in the morning and you'd say hi to Shenfa and then you'd leave and you'd pick herbs and flowers and stuff like that on your way down to go chop wood or something like
Dude,
that.
it's so stupid, but I love collecting herbs and I love chopping wood. That's like my favorite thing to do. I just love going around picking flowers. Like this is a game that is all about this series is about stopping and smelling the roses.
Yep.
And Yu Suzuki in 3 made it to where, hey, like you can literally stop and smell these roses and pick these herbs, and if you do, you'll be rich, bro. Like I wish they had herbs in Shenmue 1 and 2 because it just gives you even more incentive to go around and explore every nook and cranny and look for herbs and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I would have definitely liked some urban foraging and the first the first two games as well. That would have been really cool. But yeah, I mean, just stuff like that, like going around and like picking herbs and going on your way to chop some firewood or pawning some of the duplicate capsule toys you've gotten. I mean, it was so faithful, and it was like, and I guess I was almost like surprised how faithful it was given how much time had passed since Shenmue 2 came out. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, I love this. I mean,
It felt like a Dreamcast game. It really did.
it did absolutely, with like if they had some sort of like weird add-on that like enhanced like the graphics of a Dreamcast and stuff, like absolutely, it could have been a game released like 15, 20 years ago, but it wasn't. It was released in 2019, and it just was it literally checked almost all those boxes. Like, I was just super happy with it for doing that.
It's interesting. A lot of people have approached me or have mentioned, like on forums and stuff, that they have a hard time putting their finger on what the main gameplay aspect, the core gameplay of the Shenmue series is. And to me, I feel that you can best sum up Shenmue's primary gameplay as describing it as being rewarded for exploring minutia. That's the main point of playing Shenmue. You go around, you look at little things and go, wow, that's cool. Hey, I was rewarded with something. Whether it be a cassette tape, a move scroll, just finding something cool, finding an NPC you like, learning an interesting character story. Um, I feel like, or finding a mysterious scroll and then unlocking a hidden cutscene with Guizan about that scroll. Um, I feel like that's what Shenmue is all about. And in that spirit, as you were saying, I think Shenmue 3 does a great job with that. It rewards you for exploring minutia. It rewards you with herbs. It rewards you with catching different fish, getting costumes. It rewards you by finding. I loved finding Chobu-chan in Niaowu. I loved going in every little store and looking at every little thing and trying to find that little Chobu-chan guy. That was so much fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I'd say that's one of the main things that I like about it too. I just love how that game is like, it's just a slow burn throughout. Like, it's not like, God of War where it's like boom, 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 action, 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 action. I mean, obviously, I do have an appreciation for that sort of thing too. I mean, because I play shmups all the time, but no, I mean, like, I love the other end of it too, where it's like, it's just this very like slow, more like real life pace sort of experience where, you are going from store to store looking for something, or, you're just walking down an alleyway and like, hey, what's down here? And you just see like an old guy on a bench. And then, you look over and, you see two people talking or something like that. And then you go up and talk to them like, hey, what's up? And yeah, I mean, it's just this unreal experience that I feel like hasn't really been, as far as at least from what I've played, it's never been replicated by any other series, and I just it's just a very oddly satisfying thing, definitely, to do that more minutia filled stuff.
It is. It's kind of like I feel like with Nights into Dreams, I feel like you could make a comparison with Shenmue. Like Nights does something that most games don't. Nights it touches your heart in a way that you wouldn't expect a game to do because it kind of subliminally taps into like Jungian psychology, uh, and like dream analysis
Hmm.
and really reinforces you in a positive and very wholesome way. And I think in its own way, Shenmue is kind of doing something akin to that. It's looking at it's kind of like weaving Eastern philosophy and mysticism and associated with the martial arts and putting it into a video game. And you're discovering the true meaning of what being a martial artist is all about as you play Shenmue. And it's a very eye-opening and enlightening experience as you play this video game. It's just unheard of.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, just all the Japanese and Chinese culture that's in those games, that feels, it does not feel contrived at all. Like, it feels very authentic, very like well researched. I mean, it's again, like, going back to just that attention to detail. Like, you don't feel like, you're in a game, that takes place in China, that's made by people who are not familiar with Chinese culture. And as you were saying, like, with sort of the martial arts aspects and, things related back to like Virtua Fighter and all that. I mean, there is like just unmatched reverence to all of that, which is just it's incredible. It is really really cool.
Yeah, and I think Shenmue 3, even though it's lesser, it is the lesser of the three in the series, but it it still does that. It succeeds in being a Shenmue game worthy of the title. And I think that's something that all of us fans can stand behind and be proud of. I think we should be proud of how Shenmue 3 turned out. Even if some aspects of it disappoint you, the fact that it is a real, authentic Shenmue game worthy of the title is something that, you should really feel pride about.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, I mean, at this point, Shenmue fans were kind of we're a very small group of people. I mean, the Kickstarter was a huge, big deal, but I think in the end there was like, I wish I could remember how many people it was. It was like something like 40,000 people backed it, which is not that many people. I mean, and then you kind of weed out people that were disappointed because of one thing and they, turned their backs on the game or like the Kickstarter or whatever because of one reason or another. I mean, we're a pretty small group of people, but yeah, I feel like everybody who sort of stuck with it was heavily rewarded for that game, or with that game. And yeah, I mean, it was just unreal. It was really, really good for a game released so long after the originals.
Right. But I mean, it was far from perfect, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. What are some of the things you disliked about Shenmue 3, and what are some possible improvements you would like to propose for Shenmue 4?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind, and this was something I was immediately bummed out about when I discovered it in Shenmue 3, was the arcades and their lack of licensed Sega titles. Even if like they had just brought back things like Outrun and Afterburner and all those old AM2 games and all that, like that would have been totally fine. But I was thinking like before the game came out, like, oh yeah, they might have like the original Virtua Fighter in there. Maybe they'll have Virtua. Well, it's a light gun game, so it may have been a little bit hard to implement this, but like Virtua Cop or something like that. But I mean, you could have easily put in like two or three other like classic Sega arcade games from like the late '80s, early '90s, or whatever, and had those in there. And just the fact that none of that was in there just really bummed me out. And
Yeah.
kind of going along with that, just the fact that the capsule toy selection, there wasn't any of those licensed Sega capsule toys like we had in the first game. There wasn't any Sonic or Knights or Virtua Fighter capsule toys to collect. And I mean, obviously
Right.
the first two games had, like generic mundane objects like cars and appliances or whatever and things of that nature. But I don't know. I was a little
I
bit
mean, they
bummed
had
at the.
virtual on also though, like,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was awesome.
exactly, and that was. I was hoping for more of that sort of like licensed Sega stuff in there, just sort of like an obvious tribute to Sega and celebrating Sega, just like the first two games did.
Yeah.
But probably like the most like the major thing that kind of bothered me, like which unless I'm not thinking of something, this is probably like the biggest demerit that Shenmue 3 had for me was I felt like two-thirds through the game, like I felt like your relationship with Shenfa was sort of like building up, and like I wasn't expecting him by like two-thirds of the game to be like going out and everything like that, and going out on dates and like giving each other like kisses before they went to bed and stuff like that. I wasn't expecting anything like that, but I just sort of feel like the relationship was building up, and then it just kind of like stopped, like especially when you were in that, like after, I can't remember the name of it, but like when you go to the city after that first town where Shenfa lives and whatnot.
Yeah. In
Um,
Niaowu.
yeah, yeah, Niawu. When you go to
Mhm.
Niawu, like when you were staying at that hotel, it's like, you wake up in the morning and Shenfa's down in the lobby, and you're like, oh, hey, I'm about to go out, and she's like, okay, have fun, and like. You weren't doing anything together, and I was like more hoping for that. I mean, you do see her walking around town and stuff occasionally, but like when you actually go up and like talk to her, she's just kind of like, oh, how's it going? How's this going? Okay, cool, bye. Like, I mean, I was hoping for, I guess, more of like a linear buildup, which we got that to an extent, and then it just kind of like flatlined. And I really didn't like that aspect of it, but otherwise, like I was pretty happy with it overall.
Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. Well, as far as the romance between the two of them goes, excuse me, I would say we should be a little bit careful because I don't know if you saw this scene when they were in Bailu Village, but they both seem to dislike carrots. And that kind of freaks me out. It made me think maybe they're possibly brother and sister, long lost brother and sister reunited. So, I mean, I'm just saying, careful what you wish for here, Wiggles.
Right, exactly. Maybe there was a reason for that. So yeah, no, I never thought about that actually. That's interesting. It makes sense though. So yeah, maybe it's a good thing they were just kind of like, okay, this is as far as this goes. Maybe like, instincts kicked in and they were like, yeah, we need to like, put the brakes on this. This is as far as we go with,
Yeah.
us being, like friendly and all that. So
Or maybe it'll be like Joe Dirt and it makes it even better. No,
right.
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just totally kidding.
Yeah, I know
Um,
exactly. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that movie, but like I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah, like I know what you're talking about now.
yeah, that's a deep cut.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so, that's really interesting, though. I think, well, regarding the capsule toys, I totally agree with you. It stings that you don't get Virtua Fighter capsules. I mean, like, if you can have Virtua Fighter posters, why can't you do Virtua Fighter capsule toys? Why can't you just have some Sega stuff in there? But I guess Sega was a little more hands off. I mean, they gave Yu Suzuki the license, so I mean, I guess we can't ask for too much.
Mhm.
But I would have liked to see more support. You know, as far as those franchises go. But I do think that the Shenmue 1 and 2 capsule toys were a really nice compromise because I felt the same amount of nostalgia looking at those capsule toys as I did looking at Virtua Fighter and Sonic toys in the first two Shenmue games. So I thought that redeemed it to a degree. Also, I thought Chobu Fighter was a cool arcade game, although, yeah, there is definitely they definitely neglected to put some really good arcade games in there. They don't even really feel like a real arcade. It felt like a more like a carnival.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and that's the part that kind of bummed me out because I mean the arcade was a huge component of just sort of my like day-to-day grind in like the first two Shenmue games. It was like, okay, I've continued along the story a little bit. I played, I got earned some money, running a lucky hit stand or whatever. So, hey, I'm gonna go, blow some steam off at the arcade. And I mean, I loved that about it, and just the fact that I didn't really feel that same sort of desire to do that in Shenmue 3 because there wasn't any of those returning, Sega classic arcade games. That was a pretty big bummer for me. That'd be to answer the other part of your question. That would be something that I would love to see in Shenmue 4 for them to sort of get those licenses to where they could put, an arcade perfect port of, the first Virtua Fighter, Virtua Fighter 2 in Shenmue 4, in addition to all those ones that we did not get in Shenmue 3 that we had in the first two games.
Right.
Like I would love to see all that, and then also with that the return of like the Sega themed capsule toys, and they could even go beyond that. Have like like Monkey Ball capsule toys, or like Billy Hatcher or something like that. Just something from
Yes.
like more like modern Sega too. I think that'd be a really cool thing if they would do something like that.
No, yeah, absolutely. I think it would be cool to have they recently uncovered, I saw on phantomriverstone.com, Switch posted an article where they discovered in the code, Lemon Hayes and his group of modders discovered this in the code that there was going to be a giant um, lucky hit stand that was like 5 stories high.
Oh man.
Yeah, and how cool would it be to like do that, but just like kick I the monkey or Billy Hatcher and his egg down a lucky hit stand and just see him bounce around and try to win a prize.
Oh man.
Something like that would be so great. Like because you had the duck races in Shenmue 2, something really big and over the top and silly like that would be fun to put in like Shenmue 4, and something like that in Shenmue 3 would have been cool. Um, Something I really like about Shenmue 3 also is uh, the way that they did the training system. I actually really liked watching the meter go up for like my defense and for my attack.
Hmm.
And I actually liked that in order to increase your attack, you have to go and find scrolls and increase your knowledge of Kung Fu. And then you practice those scrolls. And the scrolls are like super expensive.
Yep.
Um, I kind of feel like that with my Sega Saturn collection. I gotta like hustle this money and go get a Sega Saturn game and then practice Darius Gaiden to get my gamer skill up, kind of a thing.
Right.
But I love how like like even on the very first day in Shenmue 3, you go in and you're like, hey, there's Lucky Hit. You play Lucky Hit, you win a little toy car. Then you go over and you chuck a rock in a bucket. and and it's actually very difficult and you can actually knock the bucket over. Like there's like physics in the bucket, so like you can screw it up.
Yeah.
And you've got to win like an alarm clock and a soccer ball. But if you win that stuff, you can turn it into the pawn shop and get a scroll. So like all these really dumb stupid little mini games that are actually kind of fun, they're kind of a guilty pleasure for me.
Hmm.
They have a function in that you use them to get scrolls. Um, and so even though there are less arcade games, I love the fact that you can go play these little games, win these little prizes, trade them in for scrolls, trade them in for cash, get new outfits, get more powerful. I thought that was just really well done, and it just I feel like even though Shenmue 3 is the weakest in the franchise, I also find it the most addicting.
Yeah, it has a lot of things in there. I mean, like as you had mentioned earlier, I mean, like just going to like chop firewood. I mean, it's like an oddly cathartic thing where you have to sort of like line it up to sort of just get like when you sort of get on a roll and it's just like perfect, 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 perfect. You're just like I'm unstoppable. And it sounds like, I mean, like when I say it, it sounds like the most boring thing in the world. Like, oh, you go chop firewood. Wow, that sounds like a fun game. But I mean, it's just it is like
It
you have to really
is.
experience it. Like it's like yeah, it's like you will never have this much fun chopping firewood ever. Like not in real life, not in another video game. It's like unmatched. Like
Yeah.
it's
With the
it's
way the
so funny.
music
Yeah.
changes, and if you get three excellence in a row and it changes the music again.
And then like the old guys in the back is like, good, good, yeah. Like, I mean, it's just like it just kind
Yeah.
of eggs you on and like makes you want to do it. And then like, obviously you slip into a depression as soon as like you screw it up or whatever.
Oh,
But
I
I mean
know.
that
You just deflate. Your ego just goes totally
ex-
deflates. But yeah, when that guy's watching you and egging you on, and you're on like a hot streak, and you hit like six excellence in a row, and he's like, "Oh, whoa!" Like he's like in awe of you, like you're a god, and he's like, "I can't handle this. My head's gonna explode if you keep chopping wood like this, Rio." Like it's a weird, it's a weird relationship that they have. Like
yeah.
I don't know why that guy is so into chopping wood, but and it reminds me of like a Wolf Hawkfield like CG portrait series for the Sega Saturn thing, like where you would see Wolf Hawkfield like chopping wood or something up
Mhm.
in Canada. Like that's what Rio is doing. He's doing a Wolf Hawkfield kind of thing from Virtua Fighter, chopping that wood. I
Right.
just I thought that I just think that's great. Like I don't know, like that's I said that Shenmue 3 doesn't have like a silly little secret like duck racing, but I don't know, maybe in a way the wood shopping kind of serves that purpose to an extent, or at least all the different costumes do too. I think those things were really good. Um, can I tell you something? I was surprised to hear you didn't mention that one of your main disappointments was. I expected you to say that the Virtua Fighter combat system not being in place, not being implemented, would be one of your major gripes, but it sounds like that wasn't one of the main things for you.
No, it wasn't. I mean, like it definitely was noticeable that it was different, but it didn't it I don't know. I guess I was able to adapt to the new fighting system enough to where I started really enjoying it. And so it was one of those things where it was like, yeah, it stinks that like it doesn't play like Virtua Fighter 5 or anything like that, but at
Yeah,
least
or have
like
throw moves.
yeah, but I felt it was a pretty like cromulent fighting system for what it was, and I did like it based on that. I mean, I would definitely say that I liked the fighting like the battle system from the first two games more, but for what it was in the third one, I didn't. It definitely wasn't one of those things that I was left longing for when I finished the game or while I was playing it. I was definitely having fun with it during the combat.
Yeah, I actually did get some enjoyment out of the combat. And I mean, it's undeniable that the Virtua Fighter combat system or that engine, it had a lot more depth. It had a lot more freedom. It for me, it's a lot more enjoyable. But I'll be honest, a lot of my friends who I've gotten into Shenmue, I've introduced them to it, and the ones that most of them don't even like it, but the ones that actually like it, when they play the combat, they just even though it's such a deep, complex system, they just spam punch or
Right.
kick and get all the way through the game like that. And they don't even
Right.
use all the wealth of different moves. So like people can complain that, oh, you, Shenmue 3, you just mash buttons and something meaningful will happen and that's dumb. Like why would you want that? But in Shenmue 1 and 2, I hate to break it to most people, but most casual players, that's all they actually really did. So in a way, like Shenmue 3 probably the Shenmue 3's combat system probably really feels like an improvement to people who just pushed XXX and AAA the whole time to defeat Donyu. Because when they mash a bunch of buttons, instead of just the same three punches coming out, instead of the same three kicks coming out, they're doing all these different moves, and they feel like they're actually doing stuff. And so, in a way, like people claim that the combat system is so much inferior to the first that it alienates everyone. It alienates new players, it alienates old players, and no one likes it. I don't think that's true. I think that newer players are less alienated by the new combat system than by the Virtua Fighter one, and that's hard for me to admit, because I really love I'm a big Virtua Fighter guy. I think I
Mhm.
really wish we could go back to the Virtua Fighter engine. I don't know if it's possible to do that, but um, I think you've got a point. It is fun, and I do think it succeeded in uh, providing more variety for casual fans, oddly enough.
And I definitely think I never thought about it that deeply, but yeah, I would definitely agree with you on that. Like I think it was a much more accessible fighting system in Shenmue 3, and this is an assumption, but I'm guessing that was by design, and it was probably also maybe coupled with the fact that I wonder if the actual it would be Sega property, like they would own the Virtua Fighter engine and everything like that that's in Virtua Fighter 5 and obviously all the previous games, and just kind of going along with the lack of the arcade licenses and all that. I wonder if that's something they just weren't able to incorporate. I mean, that would have had to probably be a. I'm not a expert on a game development or anything like that, but I would have to assume that was something they would have had to sort of like sort out and decide on like really early on in development, considering how integral it is, that you're doing martial arts and fighting opponents and whatnot. That they just weren't able to get it, so they had to sort of like okay, we need to make our own fighting system pretty much for this new Shenmue game we're making.
Yeah.
It's too bad we can't use the old one, but yeah, I mean it. As far as that level of accessibility, I did find it a lot more accessible in Shenmue 3. But yeah, I mean, just being able to pretty much feeling like you're playing Virtua Fighter during the combat sequences in Shenmue 1 and 2 were just absolutely they were a huge part of why that game was just so awesome, specifically
Yep.
during those parts. And
It was
I
a
can definitely see
big
why that
part
would
of the
bum people
appeal
out.
for a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people.
Yes.
It definitely was. Sorry, I didn't mean to run over your thought there. How did you feel about but let me ask you this. How did you feel about the story progression in Shenmue 3? Did you feel, yeah, how did you feel about it?
I liked it for the most part. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I don't know if well, I'll assume that most people who are listening to this have probably played and beat Shenmue 3 when I say this, but I guess if you have not, spoiler alert coming up. But at the very end, like, how it all sort of culminates and you actually meeting Londi face to face again. I mean, you do at the end of Shenmue 2 when he's on the helicopter and all that, but it's like he's up there and you're down there. So it's like, what are you going to do about it? But like in Shenmue 3, you're actually just like in the same room as him. And I was just like, I was like, oh my God, this is like what I've been waiting for. I just remember like my like adrenaline went to like a 10 at that point. And I was like, oh my God, let's do this. But like everything leading up to that, it was kind of that same sort of thing where you're trying to gather information and you're finding things out about the mirrors and stuff like that, and like the Phantom River Stone. You're kind of getting the history of all of that, and just like, I mean, it really enhances things, and it also sort of I feel like this sort of began in Shenmue too, but it really sort of points out a lot of the flaws of pursuing revenge as a motive and how that sort of transforms people into the exact thing they're trying to seek revenge on. And
Right.
I felt like how it kind of challenged that a lot in Shenmue 3. I thought that was a really awesome component, even though Ryu was mostly like, yeah, like uh forget that. Like
Right.
I don't care what you have to say. Like I'm gonna, like totally like destroy Londi. And I just thought that was a really cool thing, how that was sort of brought up at various points. And then also how even though you had done all these like feats with defeating, this expert martial artist and this expert martial artist, just how, you'd face these opponents, whether or not they were, friendly characters or they were antagonistic or whatever. You'd battle them and you just realize how much you still needed to learn and how you really had no chance against Londi in your current state. So you had to get you essentially had to get good and learn more moves and find more just kung fu masters and stuff like that. And I love that. It felt like some 1970s martial arts movie or something like that, which I love those movies. So like I don't know, I really got a lot out of that. But it was just like, I mean, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place with like the story and the plot progression because there's just so much there that I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to do this. It's like I would go to do something and like on the way to do that thing, 3, 4, 5 other things would pop up that I wanted to figure out or I wanted to accomplish. And I never felt bored in that game. It just, whether it
Right.
was, whether it was like a mainline story thing, I mean, it all just clicked for me. It was pretty awesome.
So it doesn't sound like you expected the series to reach some kind of conclusion by the end of Shenmue 3.
No, and I was pretty confident that it wouldn't. I can't remember if Yu Suzuki ever said anything about like, yeah, I know he said this afterwards at least, but I can't remember if before Shenmue 3 came out where he was like, yeah, I'm going to need at least, Shenmue 4, maybe even Shenmue 5 to conclude the series.
Yeah, he said way before. He said before we even got a couple delays that
Okay.
this would not wrap up the series.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're right.
So
He did do that.
So I guess I was my expectations were kind of tapered by that. And I mean you have those like old pictures from like the development days of like Shenmue 1 and 2 where like you have a whiteboard and you literally have all these chapters broken up and it shows like Shenmue 1 being chapter 1 and then the chapter 2 is like the boat ride between like Japan and Hong Kong and all that, which we didn't obviously get a game for, but that was chapter 2. And then Shenmue 2 is like chapter 3, 4, and 5 or something like that. And then like it has like the other games and it kind of like a question mark at one point, like, how long is this going to go? Like, how far does this go? And so, yeah, I mean, I certainly wasn't expecting it to wrap up. And even with Shenmue 4, like part of me wants it to wrap up in Shenmue 4 because I'm afraid if it doesn't, we may be in the exact same situation we were in 2001 where, Shenmue 2 ended and it was like, okay, cool. When's Shenmue 3 going to come out? And we're just all like, oh, okay.
Yeah, right.
So I'm kind of hoping we don't run into that situation again. I mean, hopefully, I don't know what the sales figures for Shenmue 3 looked like. I would assume they were probably decent at least, even
Yeah, they
despite
were
the.
okay. Like it was one of those things where the Kickstarter made so much money that Deep Silver went, okay, our projections are we're going to make this much of a profit. And then Shenmue 3 sold enough to make a profit, but it didn't make as much of a profit that it met their projections for what they expected it to make.
Okay.
That's how corporations work, like big business is always like, you made us money, but you didn't make us as much money as we expected you to make. So we're disappointed in you, kind of that kind of a deal. So it sold enough to turn a profit, but yeah, it didn't it didn't do gangbusters. So I don't know what that means. To be honest, I don't know what that means for Shenmue 4. If that means that it wasn't a flop.
Right.
They didn't lose their money on it. So usually it's hard to get a flop to be funded again to make money. But it sold less than they expected it to. So it could go either way. Maybe I don't know. I'm optimistic. I think Shenmue 4 is definitely going to happen, but I think that the sales were kind of mediocre.
Okay. And that's kind of the impression that I got. I wasn't sure though, 100%, but I agree with you. I do think we'll get a Shenmue 4 eventually. I mean, who knows when that'll be. I mean, I guess considering how long it's been since Shenmue 3 came out, I would hope that at least we'd maybe get like a teaser at least maybe in the next year or two. I guess they're planning on doing like a digital E3 this next year, so who knows, maybe something will transpire there, but yeah, like I think that I'd really like to see it wrap up in Shenmue 4. I know that that might be too optimistic and a fifth game would maybe be needed to do that, but I mean after Shenmue 2 came out and we were all just sort of like all the Shenmue fans were just kind of left in the wind, like, okay, when's Shenmue 3 gonna happen? And we had all these like false leads and like, oh, like this is happening. And like I don't know if you remember, but like I think it was probably around like 2005 or so, there was gonna be like a Shenmue Online, which was gonna be like an MMO. And I mean there was all
Yeah,
these
I
like,
read
little
about that in Game Pro magazine also.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, there was like all these little glimmers of hope, and so like they just kept us going and going and going. And I remember like I beat Shenmue 2. I think it was probably like in 2002, maybe 2003. And I remember immediately after beating that game, I went online and I went to the official Shenmue website, and there was actually a tab for Shenmue 3, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's so amazing." And like I clicked on it thinking like, "Okay, this is going to happen soon, or maybe it's already out." And it said like, more information coming soon or something along those lines. And so, that version of the website has been gone for easily 15 years at this point. But like it just was like this continual thing, and like I just don't want to feel that way again. I don't think anybody does. So it's like
No.
if Shenmue 4 does happen, I hope that it does get wrapped up in that game. I want more Shenmue games than Shenmue 4, but I just worry that that might happen because it just doesn't have that mainstream modern appeal. Like it's definitely something that is very sentimental to the people who knew what it was when it came out and played it back in the day, and that was a lot of people. But it just, I mean, a lot of those people don't play video games anymore. A lot of those people don't play retro games anymore, or they don't know how to. I mean, even though they re-released all the Shenmue 1 and 2 for the PS4 and the Xbox One and everything like that. Maybe they don't know that's out. I mean, it wasn't like,
Yeah.
this huge,
Shenmue
huge
fans are
release.
getting old.
They are, yeah. And I mean, it's like I would have to imagine that probably like the oldest ones might be like, 50s, 60s or whatever, but still, I mean, none of us are going to live forever. And, the main thing I worry about, though, is Yu Suzuki. I mean, he seems like he's in pretty good health, but I think he's in his late 50s, maybe early 60s at this point. And
Yeah.
even if he lives to be like 100 years old, I mean, he's not going to be making games when he's in his 90s, most likely. So, you
Right. Well,
know,
we'll need to make these games sooner rather than later, but or at least before he retires,
yeah,
altogether. But I will say this: getting Shenmue 4 and 5, getting both of those, is not as difficult as getting 3.
I would
Getting
agree with that.
3 was
I would agree
way
with that.
harder. Like we're in a way better position now to get 4 and 5 than we ever were to get 3 10 years ago.
I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah. Cause I mean, it was just, especially, I mean, I feel like if it was going to happen like sooner than later back then, it would have happened shortly after Shenmue 2 came out. But like, I mean, as you were saying, like, I mean, the more time that went by, like, the less and less likely it was going to happen. And then, 2015 rolls around and we get that E3 reveal, and it just was like I mean, at that point, I was like 99% sure we were never going to get Shenmue 3. I had almost given up like all hope at that point. So I mean,
Yeah.
I don't feel that way now, though. I certainly feel like we have a way, way better chance of getting, a Shenmue 4 absolutely, and maybe even a Shenmue 5 if it comes to that.
Yeah. And an anime,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. We are getting an anime. I don't
right?
know why I kind of like completely spaced that out, but we are getting an anime too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty to look forward to. It's never been a better time to be a fan of Shenmue. I say that a lot, but it's really true. And things like the anime, things like these ports, these are going to bring new fans into the fold, which are desperately needed because we are not getting any younger. Um, but I think the future is bright for the Shenmue franchise, and if the fans can make Shenmue 3 happen, which was basically impossible, there was like a less than 1% chance of making Shenmue 3 happen, and it
Mhm.
happened. We can make Shenmue 4 and 5 happen. If we can make 3, we can do anything. Um, so I guess unless there's anything else you wanted to mention, I thought about transitioning over, but not if you wanted to talk about anything else first.
At the moment, no. I mean, I think we've definitely reminisced and discussed our love of the Shenmue games and all that quite a bit. So yeah, whenever you're ready, we can move on to the next round of this discussion.
Okay, man. So on this part, this is towards the end. To wrap up the podcast, I always play a video game trivia segment called Back of the Box. And this is going to be in honor of Wiggles' Back of the Box Shmup Edition, where I find different shmups from my Sega Saturn and Dreamcast collections. And let's see, I think I have 5 here. And
Okay.
we're going to see if Wiggles can guess all 5. Let me mix them up real good for you.
Shuffle the deck.
Shuffle a deck. It's a very expensive deck.
Right. Don't drop any CDs or anything like that. This will be a much shorter podcast if that happens.
Oh, no, don't even say I don't even want to manifest that. Don't even put the thought in my head. So, okay. Obviously, I will omit, when I read the back of the box, I will omit anything that would be like the actual name of the game. So like if it was Sonic Adventure 2, I would not read the name Sonic. So
Right.
but so anyway, here we go. I'm going to read this, and you can guess it at any time here. All out intergalactic war. The heavens explode into intergalactic chaos in this classic arcade shooter for the Sega Dreamcast. The rebellion's savage forces have returned in an all-out campaign for universal domination. Only you can defeat them. Pick your aircraft and prepare for high-tech dogfights, relentless enemy fire, fantastic power-ups, and devastating weapons like the Reflect Laser and Reflect Force. Use the score multiplier to rack up astronomically high scores. Team up with 3 of your friends for an all-out 4-player simultaneous space battle to deliver the universe from the dark forces.
Oh man. So my initial reaction was going to be Galactic Attack. It just sounded like, because in Galactic Attack you start in space and you literally make your way down to like the Earth's core to where you
Right.
like fight the final battle and all. But I don't think that's it because I don't remember any reflective attacks in that game.
Okay, so the reflect attack is like Reflecto Force. that's my Japanese.
I like
Reflecto
it.
Razor. That's what they say.
Oh my god, man. Let's see
I'll give
here.
you a hint. It's not really a hint. It's a Dreamcast game. That's probably what made you realize it was not Galactic Attack.
Yes, yes. And my
It,
first, so the reflection part, I want to say is it Mars Matrix?
no, it's not.
Okay, because like you can shoot like the enemy's bullets back in that, which I guess it's
Oh,
not necessarily like reflective, but I was thinking it might be that. Let's see here.
okay.
Oh my gosh.
I'll
I
give you a mulligan on that one. Do you want to come back to it?
Let's come back to it. Yeah, let's
Okay,
come back
I'll
to
give
it.
you a
Yeah.
mulligan. We'll come back to that one. Okay.
Okay.
The incredible blank arcade saga enters the next generation faster than a meteor, hotter than a blazing sun. You are the last son of a dying star. Command your state-of-the-art Silverhawk attack ship and hunt enemy squadrons to the ends of the universe. Intense shooting action, 28 enemy-packed levels, smart bombs, wave lasers, homing missiles, multi-stage power-ups, cooperative 2-player action. The odds are against you, and the fate of blank lies in your hands.
Oh my gosh. See, like the 28 stages, that should give it away. And that, like, I do have one that I'm thinking it could be. Um,
And it's for the Sega Saturn.
that's what I thought. 28 stages. I am going to. Is it Sonic Wing Special?
No.
Okay, because there's a lot of like, there are a lot of stages in that, and there's stage variants and stuff too. So I was thinking, well, maybe maybe it is 28. Like maybe they've like expanded it out to that. So, I guess I got that one wrong. I'm curious
That
to see what that one
okay.
is though.
This one is Darius Gaiden.
Okay. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
the Silver Hawk.
Oh my god. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know what? The back of the box for shooters sounds the same on every every single one. Get in your ship and blow up everyone to save the galaxy. Okay, that narrows it down.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt there. Yeah, I just I like when I play these games, like I mean, I know like a lot of them have like stories and some even have like lore and all that. And there are a few that like I'm somewhat familiar with, like Radiant Silvergun, for example. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean Darius, like I was like, is that what the ship's called? Like, I mean, it's a cool
Silver Hawk.
ship, but yeah, the Silverhawk, okay.
It is.
Um,
It is.
oh man, okay, all
Okay,
right.
here's
So
one for you. Have the time of your life making billions of things explode. Join Riki and Mama Makishi as they pilot the most destructive force the galaxy has ever known, the giant robot Blank, against the forces of a notorious intergalactic crime syndicate. Utilize Blank's devastating firepower to blast your way through 44 levels of nonstop hardcore action filled nonstop arcade action filled with mind-bending puzzles and titanic bosses. Just don't forget to breathe.
um
One of the most fun games I've played on my Dreamcast, SegaWeb.com.
I'm so It sounds like I don't remember it. Don't remember 44 levels in it, but I mean, I want to say Gunbird 2.
Ah,
Because it kind of sounds like
oh
that's what you
well.
do in.
So let me give you a hint.
Okay.
This is not Gunbird 2, but this was on the N64 originally in Japan.
Bongayo.
There you
Bongayo.
go. We'll
Yep.
give that one
Yep.
to you. You got Bangayo.
Awesome.
Nice job. You've redeemed yourself for
Awesome.
this.
Awesome. I can just hear my like subscriber level just drop and like, oh man, this guy's a poser. Like he doesn't know what these games are. He didn't read the backs of
I don't
the
think
CD
any
cases.
shoot 'em up collectors read the back of the boxes for shoot 'em ups. You just rip and you just put it in and rip, man. That's all.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I watched gameplay footage or found out about these on some website, and I was like, hell yeah, I need to play that. So, no, I have not. I admit that I have never read. Maybe there's like one or two exceptions, but I've never read the back of any of the CD cases for any of these games. So, shame on me.
Well, no, not at all. I think this is very illuminating at how samey all these shoot 'em ups sound. And I don't even
Right.
know if Bangai counts as a shoot 'em up, really. It kind of is.
I
That
I
was
mean,
kind of a
yeah, I mean, I definitely, it definitely has like shmup DNA, and it's definitely not mostly just because you can kind of go wherever you want to and everything, and also it has like those like pretty much where you have like enemy missiles coming towards you, and then you can press like a button or something like that, and then you just like launch all hell like all over
yeah.
the screen and everything like that. So I mean, it definitely has. It's very shmuppy in some ways, but
It's on the
I
fringe of being schmuppy, so
yeah.
that's why you were on the fringe of guessing it. So that counts as a win. That does not count against you because it wasn't a pure shmup. So I don't need a purely right answer. So you're good on that.
Okay,
So
cool.
okay, so here we go. This is more than intergalactic warfare. This is the future of mankind. Warp into battle from the outer reaches of the solar system. I'm sorry I'm laughing, but they just all sound the same.
Right.
To the inner bowels of hostile enemy planets, thousands of turbocharged alien warships attack from every direction. Your only hope: lock on lasers, explosive tracking missiles, lightning quick reflexes, and a soft spot for the human race.
Is it Galactic Attack?
Yes, you got it. That was
Okay,
Galactic Attack.
okay,
You had
good.
some foresight. You guessed that it would be in the list.
I did. I mean, I'm like, okay, it needs to be in the list like that. I mean,
But
I'm like forever grateful. I mean, I have a ton of like imports and I have a Japanese Saturn too, but like I like when these games are accessible. I hate the fact that so many of these really good ones you have to like, pay a fortune and import them and then either, get your Dreamcast modded or track down a import Dreamcast or
yeah,
Saturn or whatever to play them. So yeah, I mean, I'm grateful that we got that one too, and that's definitely I think that was number three on my Saturn shmup list. So
yes, it made me
yeah,
happy that I owned it. I was like, wow, yeah, I bought this before the pandemic. Sweet.
exactly,
I made I,
exactly.
I made a good choice. Yeah, like the one that you passed on, it starts out all out intergalactic war ellipses. This one starts out, this is more than intergalactic warfare. It's
Right.
it's like, man, give Wiggles a break here. You guys are not creative.
It's
Okay.
almost like they're picking on Galactic Attack too. Like this is more than Galactic Attack. I mean, that was just international warfare, or not
Yeah.
international, interdimensional or whatever. Intergalactic. Yeah.
Yeah. Suck that acclaim. We're a different
Right.
publisher. Okay. Here's one. Straight from the hit arcade game, Blank is the most intense of coordination and skilled. The action shooter features 7 characters on a quest for the magical ingredients to produce the all purpose medicine. On a journey to see the wise medicine master, you are intercepted by a rowdy band of pirates. Now maneuver through insane levels of enemy fire to pick up power ups and other weapons, and be the first to recover your stolen bounty and unlock the secret of the medicine master.
Is it Gunbird too?
That's Gunbird too. So here's the
Okay.
thing: when you guess that other one wrong, I'm like, you keep guessing. The ones you guess wrong are in the pile, so you're kind of not really guessing wrong. You're just guessing at the wrong time.
See, I'm like psychic. I'm like 5 minutes ahead of
You
this
are.
podcast.
So
I'm
I
like
just don't
I'm like
even.
boom, it's gonna be Gunbird next. Boom, it's gonna be Galactic Attack next. So yeah, I
Yes. Yeah. You just yeah. Wrong place, wrong time. But that's okay. So I don't even know if I can really count these against you. So I'm just gonna say since you guessed in the future, that makes up for that one you missed. So really, it's all about this one that you skipped out. Do you want me to read it to you one more time?
yes, I am determined to try and figure this one out.
Okay.
I think I might know what it might be. I was like thinking about it after I gave myself a break there, so hopefully I can get it. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind reading it one more time, I just want to like kind
Yeah,
of
right.
think
We
about
heard you
it.
typing on the keyboard, Googling it.
Right? I'm
No,
like
I'm just
pulling up
kidding.
my phone, like, oh man, which one could it be?
Well, yeah, just read it one more time while I turn on my voice to text.
Right, exactly.
Okay. All out intergalactic war. The heavens explode into intergalactic chaos in this classic arcade shooter for the Sega Dreamcast. The rebellion's savage forces have returned in an all-out campaign for universal domination. Only you can defeat them. Pick your aircraft and prepare for high-tech dogfights, relentless enemy fire, fantastic power-ups, and devastating weapons like Reflect Laser and Reflect Force. Use the score multiplier to rack up astronomically high scores. Team up with 3 of your friends for an all-out four-player simul. I think that's a big hint. An all-out four-player simultaneous space battle to deliver the universe from the dark forces.
Oh man.
Let's see. New enhanced score multiplier pushes scores to new astronomical heights. I already said that. In- Incredible weapons like Reflect Laser and Reflect Force. A
See,
highly
like,
anticipated sequel to the arcade classic. Blank.
See, like the 4 player should be a giveaway, but like I play all these, like I can't get my fiance to play any of these games. Like she's like super into like RPGs and stuff like that. So like
Yeah.
I'm kind of a lone wolf when it comes to playing shmups and all that. So a game could have like a 24 player mode, and I'd never know just because I'm forever alone playing it in the dark or whatever. But
Wait, so
oh
you're
my,
engaged?
I am engaged.
Oh,
Yes, Wiggles is
giggity.
engaged. Yes. So hopefully that'll we'll actually get married this year. We were supposed to get married last year, but nothing was open. So yeah,
Okay.
hopefully things turn out a little bit better this year. But
I tried to give you a hint with that, but I don't know if it helped
I'm
because I
gosh,
said giggity.
giggity. Oh, okay. Uh, I'm gonna go with the first Giga Wing.
No, it's the anticipated sequel.
Oh my God, Giga Wing 2, Giga Wing 2,
Yes, you got it.
Mulligan, Mulligan, double Mulligan. Damn it. Okay,
Hey,
yeah.
listen, that was fun though, right? Like I had fun with that.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I've probably never read any of the backs of any of these shmups or whatever that I own or have reviewed or whatever. So it's funny because I mean, as you said, like they're all like pretty much the same. So you kind of have to like pick out little details and stuff. And so
Yeah,
that was fun though. I really enjoyed that.
it was illuminating. I've never read the back of those shoot 'em up boxes either. What do you think of my shmup collection? Am I off to a good start?
You were off to a good start. Yeah, I mean, like as we said, I mean, Galactic Attack with the Saturn. I mean, that's like one of the best ones you could possibly own. And then the fact that you own Giga Wing 2, I mean, I give you mad props for that. That's funny enough, I don't actually own Giga Wing 2 anymore. I used to, but I had
Oh,
to sell a fairly big chunk of my games about 3 years ago. I had some stuff come up. But yeah, that was one of the casualties of that. So I do have the consolation of have owning it at one point, but I currently do not own it. So
gotcha.
maybe it was just a little bit fuzzy in my memory. Maybe if I still
I
owned it, I
bought
would have
it,
played it like a year ago or something. But
right. I bought it, no, I guess about almost a month ago, maybe like 3 or 4 weeks ago for 150 bucks.
that is a really good deal on that game. Like I
Yeah.
think last time I checked, I mean I don't even keep track of game prices anymore just because they've just gone like totally bananas. But
Yeah.
I think the last time I checked, it was like a $250 game. So
Right.
for 25% off, I would take that all day.
I know. Someone tell my wife that was such a good deal.
Right,
When
exactly.
all they hear is 150, what? That's too much.
Be like, it's an investment. It's an investment. These are all growing in value, and I mean,
That's
it's not wrong. It's absolutely true. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, Wiggles, I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Go ahead and plug your channel for us. Where can we find you at?
yeah, so the channel is called Wiggles Arcade. Recently changed the name from just Wiggles. So yeah, if you search Wiggles Arcade, it should come up on YouTube now and not the children's Australian show. So yeah, if you want to visit my channel, got plenty of countdowns, a lot of shmup videos. Also super into pinball just because with the name Wiggles Arcade, I kind of all things arcade at this point. So definitely love pinball. Expect fighting game stuff. I do have a Capcom versus video up currently, but I plan on doing more fighting stuff in the near future.
That's a really
Uh,
good one. I like that one
beat,
a lot.
Definitely beat 'em ups, racing games. So yeah, got some good stuff here into arcade games, which I'm assuming a lot of people are if they're into the Dreamcast and watching your channel for the Virtua Fighter content, the Shenmue content, obviously, and all that. So yeah, check
Well,
me out.
thanks very much. And Wiggles Arcade, very underrated channel. Even though you're focusing more on arcade games at the moment, I hope that you will consider collaborating with myself and members of the Shenmue community going forward, since you're such a big fan of the series.
Oh, I'd absolutely love to. I mean, my interest in gaming is like way more diverse than what I have time for to play and all that. So, and as we established, like Shenmue and Shenmue 2 are my favorite games of all time. So, I would love to do that. That sounds awesome.
Awesome. All right. Well, everybody, hope you enjoyed this episode of the Friendmue podcast. Keep friends and those you love close to you, and keep fighting the good fight, the virtue of fight. Take care.